Thank you, Damon. I guess no need for introductions then. As Damon mentioned, I work for Zillow right now. I'm the product lead for their real estate and rentals suite of applications. I joined Zillow about 2.5 years ago when the company was undergoing sort of a DNA change of becoming more of a mobile-first company and a real leader in disruptive technologies at that time. So my goal for this session is really kind of to share with you some of the learnings I've had over the years working primarily in mobile and in new technologies, and I hope that you can take some of those learnings and apply them to your own organizations. But first, let's start with the story of mobile at Zillow. The first application that Zillow released was in 2009. It was a simple iOS application. It leveraged GPS, and it showed you listings nearby. Pretty simple application, but it fundamentally and forever changed our relationship with our users. We were a 9-to-5 web service, and all of a sudden we became a 24/7 curbside PriceCheck. That application now has become 27 applications for pros and consumers across real estate, rentals, mortgages, and home improvement most recently. And with the number of applications exploding, so is the monthly unique users. In December, we had 52 million unique users over the month of December. Actually, as of last night, that number is 70 million for January. So this is a really huge audience to cater to. 65% of that audience is coming from mobile, 70% on weekend. Just to give you kind of context for that exponential growth over here, in 2010, I believe, it was newsworthy that on Christmas, it was like 35% of our users were mobile. And we're just talking 4 years ago here. Less than 4 years ago, right? Now, in December, we had over 275 million homes viewed on the mobile applications. So if you think about it, that's about 103 homes per second, every single second in the month of December. So that is a really huge audience to take care of. That's a lot of users to pay attention to their goals and needs and wants. And while we're working over here trying to come up with new things and new ways to delight them, make their life easier, help them find the home of their dreams, the platform underneath us is just changing. These are just a sample of the changes that happened to us in the past 12 months. You're over here trying to design your application on a platform that's changing practically every month from underneath you. So how did we do? We did pretty well. For the core applications, rentals and real estates, we released about 40 releases. And then we got featured at the Google I/O in June, and Apple featured us in both their September and October press releases when they released iOS 7 and iPhone 5s. So that was pretty fun. The question is really, how do we do it? How do we, be prepared for such changes that are happening all the time? And I don't know that there is one correct answer, but I can share with you the strategies that I've come up with for my teams. And I would break those strategies into two kinds of strategies. One is team strategies, and two is design strategies. For team strategies, it's more about structure and culture. One of the first things I did when I joined Zillow is advocated for a dramatic change in team formation. Design, dev, test, and business needed to operate as one cross-functional team. If you can physically locate them, co-locate them in the same space, even better. Or at least provide digital tools for them to experience this kind of co-location. That's really important for the second part of the equation or of this recipe, which is culture. There are two important parts that you need for a team that can be innovative and can move fast enough. And these two cultural attributes are, one, a culture of data-driven decision-making, respect for A/B testing, for user testing, qualitative and quantitative research in general. The understanding that really good design is the product of patient iterations over time. And sadly, not all organizations have the level of transparency and patience to kind of go through that level of iteration. And the second cultural attribute is really knowledge sharing. There are a few devs here in the audience that identified themselves earlier, and devs have this capacity. Good devs have the capacity to consume technology as fast as it comes out. So usually your devs are not sort of the problem when you're dealing with new technology. The problem is that these new platforms are challenging the way we do design. They're challenging the prevailing design wisdom. They're also challenging our current business models that just don't work for the new modes of interaction. What's impression? What is seeing something on a page? So having this culture of sharing allows you to kind of disseminate that information faster and try to keeping them, if it's all one team, keeping them sort of in lockstep about what is changing and what does it mean for design, what does it mean for business. The second set of strategies is about design, and it's really about taking your personas to that next level. How do you take, I assume pretty much everybody in the room has gone at some point or another through the exercise of creating personas, or at least know of the personas that are in your company or a part of your product. The question is, how do you take personas to the next level? It's the choice of technology part of your persona? Is the user's preferred platform part of the persona? Is their relationship with technology part of that persona? It might not seem like it, but I really find it helpful to try to think through these scenarios. One technique I like to use is to use this construct called Technographics. Now, Technographics is a market research tool. It was devised by Charlene Lee, I think 2007, when she was still with Forrester. And the construct was initially made in order to gauge people's relationship with social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc. But I find it useful as a tool to just use it to think through the different ways your users may have different relationship with technology, and if that implies anything about the persona. So let's do an example. Let's think of a persona for Zillow. Say somebody who's buying home for the second time home buyer. That's a persona. That sounds pretty good. We think we can have goals and aspirations for that persona. But let's think through and try to see if we can dissect that a little bit and see if there are differences. So forget about the inactives for a second. Spectators, this is the majority of the internet population. They're just there to consume content. They're people who are just browsing through and consuming content. Sure, that seems like, it does not really affect my persona. I can go ahead with my second-time home buyer persona as is. Joiners. These are people who are willing to join a new platform, create an account on Facebook, create an account on Zillow, create an account somewhere. But this is more like your mom creating an account on Facebook to keep an eye on you. Then you have the collectors. These are the people who are fueling Pinterest. Every one of us has maybe a friend or friend of a friend who lives on Pinterest and like just pinning stuff all the time, and that's kind of their passion, and that kind of different relationship to technology than the mom who's just there to look at pictures of their kids on Facebook. Then you have the critics, the Yelp population, who feel the need to give an opinion on everything, criticize it, value it, review it, give it star ratings. The conversationalist, all the people, the tweeps who feel the need to tweet their lunches every day. This continuous communication, this oversharing population. Then you have the creators, which is a minority really of the internet population, but they're people who are creating original content, blogs, comics, online articles, videos, whatnot. Think of all these people. Think of examples of all these people right now in your life, and think of them buying a second home. Are the needs of all those people the same? Throw platform in there as well. Are the needs of somebody, or this user stories of somebody who's primarily a Google Glass user, the same as somebody who's primarily a PC user? So see where that takes you, or where that kind of refines you. What are you doing for this different level of engagements with your personas? Do you really understand the differences between your iOS, your Android, your Glass users? Can we go a step further and go from persona to personalization, from persona X to user Bradley? Do we know more about their intention? Can we infer their intention ahead of time? So let's put all this together and I'll walk you through the story of iOS 7 for us, which we sort of knew was happening. Everyone knew something new was going to happen, but nobody knew quite the extent of the changes. The number one thing when something so large happens, you may have been planning so many features, but a total change to your visual vocabulary and modes of interaction may not have been part of the plan for this quarter. So the first thing is to really not get overwhelmed by the number of changes that are in a platform or in a new platform or new release of an OS. You don't have to implement every single feature. What you need to do is go back to your personas and think, and to your users and see where their challenges are. There trends in their current usage? Does the new technology offer answers to these particular problems? So I actually was at WWDC at the Apple conference when they announced iOS 7. As soon as they made it available, and to the detriment of my battery life, I installed it right away on my phone, bricked it a couple of times, and just to live and breathe the new OS and see what is it going to offer my users. So we went back, we did brainstorming with the team, we dissected the whole thing and started thinking, well, who's going to be affected? Early adopters. Well, okay, what are the expectations of the new early adopters? Well, our app is one app in this new digital ecosystem that they inhabit, and their expectation is going to be that it matches, at least visually and emotionally, the rest of the ecosystem that they've so eagerly jumped to embrace. And then what kind of expectations does iOS 7 set that are different from what we had before? There are a few of those. One related to content first, deference to content, remove ornamentation, very deliberate motion as understanding, motion as education. So we took all of that and decided to do a little bit of research on our users and figure out, are there any trends that we can capitalize on that iOS 7 would serve us, would help us serve best? And luckily we found a few. One is binge content consumption. We discovered that our users have consumed over 5 billion minutes inside of the Zillow real estate applications. They will consume content as fast as you can provide it. Did you know that the average person reaches for their phone about 150 times per day? The majority of the population sleeps with their phone, and the first thing they do in the morning is reach for the phone to check if they missed something overnight. What could you have possibly missed overnight? What is more important than coffee in the morning? I'm not quite sure. But they do. And so what does that really mean for our product? And what changes can we do to satisfy this kind of trend of binge content consumption? Well, first thing we did is try to figure out, well, what is our most popular piece of content? Looked at our GA data, images. They were our most popular thing. And so instead of having this tiny little image on the map that we used to have, now image became a lot more prominent. And it's the largest thing. It's docked at the bottom of the map. You can swipe it away. You can get rid of it. But if you tap on any icon, you get the larger image. And with one hand, one thumb, one gesture, left or right, you can go through all 200 results on the map without having to move your hand. You can just go like this, and we will traverse all results that are on the map for you. We also allowed users, it's kind of hard to see with this projector, but when you look at it on the phone, we distinguish between viewed and unviewed content. So we surface to them what they have possibly could have missed, and this way they can get to it faster and they can consume it faster. The second, trend we noticed to try to capitalize on is impulse and instant gratification. People want to see more of kind of reassurance that whatever they did in the app took, and also just this sense of like I can get things done and I can get things immediately. How many times were you in an argument with a friend, and to settle the argument, Wikipedia comes out, and 30 seconds flat, you have your answer and you win, So it's the same kind of thing. Can we provide more of these moments for our users in our app? We looked around and we noticed that they contact on mobile 3 times as much as they contact on desktop. Because why wait for that email to go back and forth when I can call the landlord and know right away if the apartment I'm interested in accepts dogs or not? So we looked to see if there are more ways that we can service the user this way. And we could. Things that we introduced animations for the first time in our application, and all of the animations were very deliberate to let you know immediately that something has happened. So when you're saving a home or you're saving a search, or your search criteria, we have a very deliberate short animation that shows you exactly where things are saved. This, one, reassures you that your action took, and two, teaches you exactly how to get back to that content that you wanted. Also, actions like reporting a bad listing or calling an agent get overloaded and are surfaced to the front. A lot more of that surfacing is more around convenience, which is slightly different than instant gratification. So that little heart for saving a home, there's a little heart icon that we have on top of images. That was only one tap away usually. So you have to go to the map, go to a details page, and then you can save. We took that and brought it to the front, so it's everywhere now. It's on the map, it's on the list, it's inside the details page, it's inside the photo viewer. So pretty much anywhere where you may have developed an interest in the home, we went from one tap to 0 taps. You can get to it right away. And that increased the action of favoriting a home or saving a home by 60%. Other things that we did to kind of help with convenience is look at where we can overload actions that may have different context for usage. So maybe you're setting your filters for the first time. We allow you to save that action. If you didn't save it over there and just proceeded to look at the result, you have a second chance to save it here. We predict if you have set yourself, we provide you feedback right away of how many results this kind of filtering is going to result in. But if you went ahead and executed it and we detect and predict that this is going to be too restricting, we surface a CL button at the top there that's very contextual, shows up if we detect you're running out of basically content to view within the app. That allows you to, without going to a different screen, just get rid of the most restrictive filters. So it went pretty well for us. Our iOS 7 was one of our most successful releases to date. And I thought for the rest of the presentation, it'd be kind of fun to share, well, what kind of stuff am I keeping my eyes on for 2014? Maybe we can have a discussion later about what you're keeping your eyes on for 2014. Number one is contextual experiences. On mobile, we know from the get-go that context is king, but we're really at a very unique point in time right now where the level of sophistication for contextual profiling that is possible for us as designers, as product people, is just amazing. We've never had that level of sophistication before. So predictive apps are really the future. Services like Google Now, if anybody's familiar with Google Now, is just kind of the tip of the iceberg where Google is profiling your behaviors. And if you're looking at the Seahawks all the time, results for the game will be delivered to your phone before you asking for them or before whether or not you knew there was a game today. So our tools and devices are kind of becoming the remote controls of our lives. An action in this digital world results in something happening in the real world or is interacting with something happening in the real world. Within the past year, both Android and iOS released indoor mapping technologies. For Google, it's Indoor Maps. For iOS, it's iBeacon. And they also released their own versions of user activity tracking, so they can tell you when your user changes from walking to driving or to bicycling, and when those changes happen. Think if you were a map provider, would you change the interface? Would you change the design? Would you change the UX of your app if you knew your user went from walking to all of a sudden being in a car to being in their car? Would you do something different for them there? Add to that also all the sensors and sensor technology that is new input methods that are coming, biometrics, iris scanning, touch. Heard about the Google contact lenses filing recently, like the patent. that is happening. Think about all these things. Let's go back to Google Glass. Google Glass, you're not only just watching it, it is watching you back. There's a little camera that's looking directly at your eyeballs, watching your pupil dilation, can guess your emotion, can guess what state you are in. And what would you do with that kind of information for your own product? Context also determines what kind of screen your user is going to interact with you on. They can interact with you on many channels, on different platforms, and on different screen sizes. And this usage is affected by time of day, day of the week, level of spontaneity of the action itself, but also what's closest to me. If the phone is what's near me on the couch, I'm going to suffer through writing an email, trying to dictate an email on my phone rather than get off the couch, remove the dog off my lap, and go all the way to my office to type that email. For Zillow, if you notice, phones during the early morning commute hours is what people use most with us. In the afternoon, as they come home, have dinner, they're sitting on the couch, they're watching TV, tablet usage soars in the evening. If we look at it day by day, weekends, they're walking the dog, latte in hand, phone in the other, they're going to be using mobile. There's open houses, they're walking around the neighborhood, and during the week, we might be just another tab on their browser while they're multitasking at work. So there's two interesting observations here. One is that it's not a zero-sum game. The new devices or new modes of interaction are not stealing from your mobile or tablet or web user base. It's actually additive. You're getting access to your users in places and at times you may not have had access to them before, when they're at the bus stop, when they're waiting for the latte at the coffee shop. So that's kind of interesting there, because it's increasing your access to your user. And the other observation is that means that your user is going to touch base with you on multiple platforms, multiple channels in the same day. When we did a little bit of a study to see like how people are using exact address search with Zillow, and even most dedicated app users, if they had initiated the search for that exact address on Google, they wanted to see mobile web and would use mobile web because it was a transient task. They wanted to look maybe at multiple sources at the same time, or they were looking for one reason or another. So even if they have your app, they may still want to use other channels to interact with you for different tasks, for more spontaneous tasks. App usage is incredibly popular. And users clearly are a lot more engaged in apps, but they also view app usage as more planned, as a more planned action than a spontaneous action. And research shows us really that if a user has a bad experience with you on one channel, they're a lot less forgiving. They are much less likely to try you out or give you another chance. Oh, our mobile web is not very good, try our app. Well, they're not really going to be inclined to give you a second chance, are they? Let's see. So in order to make all that happen, we're going to see a ton more innovation in the area of making interactions more frictionless, specifically when it comes to authentication, personal data management, how data is moving between platforms and channels, between online and offline interactions. But the big one is really authentication, asking people to input username and passwords all over the place is just it's reaching kind of the end of an era here, and we're already starting to see some new ways with pins and codes and biometrics with iOS 7 and voice, and there's some image ones that I've seen where like you have to draw a gesture over an image, and that becomes your kind of digital sign-in. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up next year. And we're going to see a lot more of user experience becoming more about the distillation of the experience to its purest form. Anybody here use Uber? Yes, maybe no. So Uber distills the experience of getting a ride somewhere to its purest essence. I find a car, I get in a car, I get out of the car, I get from point A to point B. All transacting is abstracted away and happens at a later point or before or after, but not necessarily right there and then. You can get rid of all that clutter kind of an experience and try to think about what is the purest form of the experience that I'm trying to provide with my product, which leads us down really the path of two kind of opposite ways of doing that. There's the tightly integrated vertical models, something like Apple, where they know everything about you, they can connect all the devices, it's great, and they can provide a really great integrated experience. Or loosely coupled smaller islands with a lot more sophisticated bridges between them. And we're starting to see that more and more with Google. If you have heard recently, they've announced that Google's doing right now app indexing. So not only are they indexing content on the web, they're indexing content from inside the apps. So basically they're abstracting the experience, they're abstracting the user data management, the authentication, the searching and the different experiences away. The only experience you need to know is Google, and they'll facilitate your interaction with all these other experiences. Now the jury is still out, of course, but both offer such unique possibilities, and innovation is, I guess, going strong on both fronts. So that's all well and good, but what could you do after you leave this room for your product? Well, I'll leave you with a couple of thoughts. Think about your content. Can you bring more of your content forward? Can you remove stuff away? How pure can you make the experience? Can you allow your users to take their content across experiences? Can you recognize context? Is there a way you can use context, even if it's primitive, if it's just a little local or previous history? What can you do to help your users there? What can you do to maintain your brand and your product integrity across channels? Are there ways you can start to think beyond personas? You can start to incorporate technology and relationship to technology with these personas, catering for different engagement levels. What can you do if your product is online and an online and offline experience to bridge those experiences a lot better? And are there new ways that you can gather more intelligent information about your user so that you know what it is that they want before they want it? Really what we're moving towards here is user experience. Much like a movie is in the cuts, user experience is about designing those spaces that are in between channels, between platforms, between online and offline life. And that is really the challenge for all of you coming up in 2014. I think this is all I had for you today. So if you have any questions, I'll take them. I think we have like 3 minutes. And if we're out of time, I can take them also in the hall. Any questions?
Maybe just a prediction from you on mortgage process, the paper heavy. Anyone who's ever done a refinance has just seen how much we're running our same signature over and over again. What's your prediction on getting that to be more streamlined? I've noticed
More streamlined. You should try our products. Try our mortgage product that can help you. I think all of these like heavy paper stuff, it might not happen in 2014, but as I said, authentication and personal signature is an area that is right now very ripe for disruption and very ripe for innovation. We're going to see movement, I think, towards how do we do digital signatures, how do we do authentication, how do we get people, like what does it mean to be authenticated, and how do we give some of that control back to the users? Because right now, I think people feel a lot like their digital identities are fragmented. They don't have very good control over everything. And so something has got to give in the next year or so in that area for sure.
I think one of the problems that our company is dealing with is we work as a meta search for flights and hotels and tarmac. People, like more than half of our users is from mobile, so they use the mobile to search for stuff. Then they move on to the PC to finish their purchase because I guess they don't really feel secure purchasing stuff on the phone.
Yeah.
So I think that's a transition that will take some time, but at the same time we're trying to come up with a solution how to make the transition between the platforms more smooth. Do you have any suggestions on that?
think we can, I'll be happy to talk with you a little bit afterwards, a little bit more in detail, but just kind of in the abstract, you're not alone in that area. I read some research recently, and it's about 80% of people, when you talk about shopping, not just flights or whatnot, it begins in one area and ends in another. So it begins offline and then the purchase happens on mobile, or begins on mobile and the purchase happens in person. And it's really complex, since it's 80% of all the transactions are happening this way. The good news about m-commerce is that it's on the rise. People are trusting more and more how, that they can purchase from their phone. It's a little scary, but I think it's more than scary, it's tedious. So we're seeing a lot of advancements there right now. People are able to just take with Uber, for example, you just take a photo of your credit card or something like that. There's just pay via your mobile bill. So there's going to be a lot more. It's another area of innovation for 2014 is payment processing, and how can we make payment processing not just I'm entering this really large error-prone number on my phone that I don't want it remembered in the browser and someone looking at it, and then a PIN and a date and the 3-digit code on the back, and it's I think that's really your biggest hurdle there, more than people feeling insecure. Any other questions? All right, awesome. We'll talk a little bit more afterwards. Thank you all for being here.